I still remember the sound of my badge clattering against the HR desk, that hollow, final clink, like the sound of my entire career collapsing. One minute I was employee of the quarter, the next I was being escorted out like a criminal. All because of a rumor. A lie so carefully planted it bloomed overnight and strangled everything I'd worked for. My name's Emily Carter, and until that day, I thought loyalty still meant something in the corporate world. I worked for Sterling Innovations, a high-end tech firm known for its sleek marketing and even sleeker politics. I'd been there for nearly 6 years, climbing from junior project analyst to team manager. I wasn't loud or flashy, just consistent. The kind of person who stayed late to help others meet deadlines, who remembered birthdays, who sent thank you emails. Maybe that's what made me easy to target. The person who betrayed me? Chloe Anderson, my so-called friend and colleague. She joined the company 2 years after me, younger, ambitious, the kind of woman who made every room feel like a competition. Still, we clicked at first. We shared coffee breaks, traded eye rolls during meetings, even went to happy hour on Fridays. She used to joke that we were ride or die at work. Turns out, she meant only one of us was supposed to survive. It started small. Whispers in the break room that went silent when I entered. A few cold stares from people I'd once had lunch with. I brushed it off, told myself I was imagining it. Then, one Monday morning, HR called me in. The office felt wrong that day. Too quiet. The hum of the air conditioner buzzed in my skull like a warning. "Emily, could you step into the conference room for a moment?" said Mark, the HR director, with that awkward politeness people use when they're about to ruin your life. I smiled, trying to hide the knot forming in my chest. "Sure, what's going on?" Inside sat Janet, the VP of HR, her face unreadable. "Please have a seat," she said. Mark cleared his throat. "Emily, we've received some concerning reports about your conduct, specifically regarding confidential information being shared with one of our competitors." For a second, I thought I'd misheard him. "I'm sorry, what?" Janet leaned forward. "We have reason to believe you may have leaked internal marketing data to Trendmark Solutions." The room started spinning. I laughed, the kind of laugh that comes out sharp and panicked. "That's insane." "I would never. Several employees have corroborated this information," Janet interrupted. Several employees. The words hit harder than the accusation itself. Someone had built a case against me, and more than one person had helped. Mark slid a manila folder across the table. "We'll need your company laptop and phone. Effective immediately, your access will be suspended pending investigation." I wanted to scream, to fight, but my body went numb. My throat locked up. My badge, my name, my position, my identity, all turned into a worthless piece of plastic. When I left that room, I caught sight of Chloe standing near the elevators. Her expression was perfectly neutral, too neutral. "Hey," I whispered, desperate for someone, anyone, to believe me. "You've heard what's going on, right? Please tell me you know I didn't do this." She placed a hand on my shoulder, eyes wide with feigned sympathy. "Oh my God, I can't believe this. Of course I know you'd never," but her voice had that strange edge, something rehearsed, something slippery. In the following days, my inbox filled with silence. No messages from coworkers, no calls from my manager. I was radioactive. Then, late one night, while scrolling through LinkedIn half out of habit, half out of despair, I saw a post from Sterling Innovations. A photo of Chloe. "Congratulations to Chloe Anderson on her promotion to Project Manager of Marketing Strategy." My old title. My heart stopped. That was when the first real crack formed in my denial. It wasn't just bad luck. It wasn't a misunderstanding. Someone had planned this, and done it beautifully. For weeks, I tried to convince myself there had to be another explanation. Maybe she didn't know what HR had accused me of. Maybe the promotion was a coincidence. Maybe. But at night, when I replayed that day in my head, her calm eyes, the way she avoided mine as security led me out, something inside me whispered the truth I didn't want to face. I wasn't paranoid. I was betrayed. And though I didn't know it yet, the CEO, the one person with more power than Chloe ever dreamed of, was about to find out exactly who started the rumor. But that comes later. For now, I just sat in the dark, staring at the LinkedIn post that had stolen my breath, my future, and my faith in people, wondering how someone I once called friend could stab me so quietly I didn't even feel the blade until it twisted. And deep down, beneath the heartbreak, a quiet ember began to burn, small, steady, and dangerous. Because I wasn't done yet. Looking back, the signs were always there. I just didn't want to see them. Maybe it was easier to believe Chloe was my friend than to face the quiet unease that kept tugging at me. After all, we'd built what I thought was genuine trust. We stayed late on projects together, ordered takeout when deadlines loomed, laughed about office politics like teammates in the trenches. She used to say things like, "We're the only ones who actually care around here, M." And I believed her. God help me, I believed every word. But after her promotion, after the rumor that wrecked me, the memories started to replay in sharper focus. All those little things I brushed off suddenly looked like warning lights flashing red. It began months before HR called me in. At first, it was subtle. Chloe started leaving me out of certain email threads. We'd been co-leading a campaign for a new product launch, but suddenly she was looping in my junior associate instead of me. When I asked her about it, she'd smile that disarming smile and say, "Oh, sorry. Total oversight, you know how my inbox gets." And I did know, she was charming enough to make any excuse sound reasonable. Then came the favoritism. Our boss, Greg, started giving her projects directly, bypassing me entirely. He'd always been a stickler for hierarchy, but with Chloe, it was different. She'd lean on his office door frame, all effortless confidence and soft laughter, and the next day she'd have another high-profile assignment. "Guess hard work pays off," she'd say with a wink when I congratulated her. It wasn't just hard work, though. It was something else, a skill I didn't have. She knew how to make people feel seen, even if it was just a strategy. The first time I truly felt that sting of something darker was during the annual performance review cycle. I'd mentored Chloe, helped polish her presentations, even covered for her when she missed deadlines. But when management announced nominations for Team Excellence, her name was on the list and mine wasn't. She turned to me after the meeting and said, I told Greg to nominate you too." I swear I did. I smiled and said, "It's fine, really," but something twisted in my chest. Later, when I passed Greg in the hallway and he said, "Oh, I didn't realize you and Chloe were working that closely," I understood. She hadn't said a word about me. Still, I told myself not to overthink it. That's what women are taught, isn't it? Don't make waves. Don't be dramatic. Don't ruin a friendship over suspicion. But the tension started to seep into my days. Emails went unanswered. My feedback in meetings was suddenly misunderstood. Chloe began to correct me in front of the team, always with a laugh, always followed by, "I didn't mean it like that." One night, I overheard her on the phone as we were both packing up. Her voice was low, hushed, but I caught fragments: leverage, trust, she'll never see it coming. When she noticed me standing by the door, she smiled quickly, too quickly. "Oh hey, just talking to my sister about her breakup." Total mess. My gut whispered liar, but my heart said friend. Weeks later, she invited me out for drinks after work, a peace offering, she said. "You've been so tense lately," she teased. "You need to relax." I laughed it off, pretending I wasn't half cracked inside from the constant undercurrent of unease. At the bar, she ordered our usual, gin and tonic with lime. We sat near the window, watching rain streak the glass, and for a moment I felt like everything was okay again. But when she started talking, her tone shifted, softer, probing. "So," she said, stirring her drink, "if you ever left Sterling, where would you go?" Hypothetically. I blinked. Why would I leave? She shrugged, looking at me over the rim of her glass. "You know how companies are. Sometimes it's good to have options." It felt like a test. I laughed nervously. "I'm not going anywhere, Chloe. I love my job." Her smile tightened. "Yeah, of course you do." That night, as I walked to my car, I couldn't shake the feeling that she'd been fishing for something, or maybe just measuring how much I'd tell her. Then the gossip started. Not full-blown rumors yet, just whispers about a data breach in marketing. I overheard two interns talking near the coffee station. Someone's been leaking reports, one said. Really? Who? They both glanced up as I passed, then went silent. I forced a smile, pretending not to notice the sudden quiet. But my heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. That night, I wrote in my journal, something I hadn't done in years. Chloe's different lately. Can't explain it. It's like she knows something I don't. Like there's a game being played, and I'm the only one who doesn't know the rules. Still, I told myself it was just stress. Office politics. Miscommunication. But deep down, something inside me, small and trembling, knew better. It was the smell of smoke before the fire. I just didn't realize yet that Chloe wasn't watching it burn. She was the one holding the match. It happened on a Tuesday. Funny how ordinary days can carry the weight of your undoing, no warning, no storm clouds, just a regular morning that turns into the day your world collapses. I was sitting in my apartment, laptop open, scrolling through job boards, still trying to piece together what had happened at Sterling Innovations. It had been 2 weeks since HR escorted me out. 2 weeks of silence, humiliation, and endless questions that never found answers. Then my phone buzzed, an email notification. Subject line, Internal Compliance Follow-up, Confidential. It was from Michael Hurst, the CEO of Sterling Innovations. For a second, I thought it was some kind of cruel joke. CEOs didn't email former employees, especially not ones accused of corporate espionage. But when I opened it, my breath caught. Emily, I've been reviewing recent internal reports and discovered inconsistencies in the evidence that led to your termination. I'd like to speak with you directly. Can you meet tomorrow at 9 a.m.? I reread the message at least 5 times. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped my phone. When I walked into the glass-walled office the next morning, I felt like a ghost returning to the scene of her own funeral. People avoided eye contact. A few glanced up from their screens, then looked away just as fast. Michael met me in a private conference room, tall, silver-haired, the kind of man who made people lower their voices when he entered. "Thank you for coming, Emily," he said quietly. "I owe you an apology." That sentence alone nearly broke me. He slid a file across the table. "We conducted an internal audit after your departure." Something didn't add up. Inside were printed emails, supposedly between me and a representative from Trendmark Solutions, the rival company I'd been accused of sharing data with. But I didn't write them. The tone was wrong. The formatting, the sign-off, even the way my name was spelled in one. "Someone forged these," I whispered. He nodded grimly. "We traced the digital fingerprints. The IP address matches a device registered to your former teammate, Chloe Anderson." For a moment, the world went silent. The kind of silence that feels like it's pressing against your eardrums. Chloe. Her name felt like acid in my mouth. "She created a false paper trail," Michael continued. "Copied fragments of your real correspondence, spliced them into fake emails, then sent them anonymously to HR. She even deleted her own drafts to cover her tracks, but IT recovered the logs." I couldn't breathe. My chest was tight, my mind spinning. She framed me?" "Yes," he said. "And I believe she did it to secure your position. She was promoted within 48 hours of your termination." My stomach lurched. Everything clicked into place. The missing emails, the gossip, her probing questions over drinks, the way she'd hugged me the day HR fired me and whispered, "You'll land on your feet, Em." That hug hadn't been comfort. It had been victory. Tears blurred my vision. "I trusted her," I said, voice cracking. "I helped her get that job. I defended her when people said she was manipulative." Michael's expression softened. "I know. You weren't the first person she's done this to, but you were the one she learned the most from." He told me the board was opening a formal investigation. Chloe would be suspended effective immediately. They'd also issue a public statement clearing my name. But none of it felt like justice. Not yet. As I left the building, the memory of every shared laugh, every whispered secret, every late-night brainstorming session twisted inside me like broken glass. I drove aimlessly for an hour until the shock gave way to something deeper: grief. The kind that makes your body tremble even when you're sitting still. I parked by the river, turned off the engine, and screamed. Not out of rage. Out of betrayal. It wasn't just the job. It was the violation of trust, of friendship, of sisterhood. I had believed we were allies in a cutthroat world, two women holding each other up. I hadn't realized she was the one cutting me down, inch by inch, smile by smile. When I got home, I found the old group photo on my fridge, me and Chloe at last year's company gala. My arm around her shoulder, her head tilted toward me, both of us laughing. I tore it in half, then into smaller pieces, then smaller still, until her face was nothing but fragments on the floor. Somewhere between the tears and the shaking, a strange calm began to settle over me. Because beneath all the pain, a cold truth crystallized, something sharp, unshakable, and clear. She thought she'd buried me with her lies. But what she didn't know was that the CEO hadn't just discovered her betrayal. He'd seen the kind of woman I was: loyal, honest, and now quietly dangerous. I wasn't going to beg for my job back. I wasn't going to cry over lost friendships. I was going to reclaim my dignity. And when the time was right, I was going to make sure Chloe Anderson learned exactly what happens when you stab the wrong woman in the back. The fire inside me had stopped burning wild. It burned steady now, slow and deliberate. The calm before the storm. The day after the CEO's meeting, I woke up in silence. No alarm. No rush to check emails. No carefully planned outfit for a world that had already judged me guilty. Just stillness and the echo of everything I'd lost. The truth about Chloe had detonated inside me like a bomb, but after the shock faded, all that was left was emptiness. My reputation, my confidence, even my sense of identity gone. And yet, somewhere deep in that wreckage, something small was still alive. A pulse. For the first time in weeks, I forced myself to sit up, to actually look around my apartment. Dirty coffee mugs, unopened mail, rejection emails piling in my inbox. It all screamed defeat. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, hollow eyes, messy hair, a woman who looked like she'd forgotten what strength even felt like. That was the moment something inside me snapped. Not in a reckless, angry way. It was quieter. Heavier. A realization that no one, not HR, not Michael, not anyone, was going to hand me my dignity back. If I wanted to reclaim it, I'd have to fight for it myself. I took a deep breath and said out loud, enough. The word felt foreign, but powerful. Like a seed cracking open. That day, I started rebuilding not just my career, but myself. I began by writing everything down. Every detail of what Chloe had done. Every email she'd forged, every project she'd sabotaged, every small manipulation I'd ignored because I didn't want to believe my instincts. It wasn't just about evidence, it was therapy. Each sentence was me taking a piece of my power back. Then I wrote something I hadn't expected, a letter to myself. You didn't lose because you were weak, Emily. You lost because you trusted the wrong person, and there's no shame in believing the best in people. But now you know better. And now you rise. When I finished, I didn't cry. For the first time since everything happened, I actually smiled. That week, Michael called again. He told me the board had officially cleared my name and terminated Chloe's contract. She'd tried to deny everything, even claimed I'd hacked her system, but the evidence was airtight. She's gone, he said simply. There was a long pause. Then he added, Emily, I know you have no reason to trust us, but I'd like to offer your position back. It should have felt like victory. But it didn't. I thanked him politely and said I'd think about it. After hanging up, I sat in silence, staring at the ceiling. The truth was, I didn't want to go back. Not to that office, not to those glass walls that had watched me fall apart. I wanted something more. Something that couldn't be taken away by lies or rumors. That's when the idea began forming, fragile, but fierce. I'd start my own firm. Not to compete with Sterling, but to create the kind of workplace I'd always wished for, one where integrity wasn't a liability and ambition didn't mean betrayal. It sounded impossible, but so had surviving the past few months. So I got to work. I started small, free consultations, freelance strategy gigs, networking events. The first few clients were hesitant. My name still carried whispers of scandal, but slowly, one by one, people began to see the truth. Turns out, when you stop chasing validation and start owning your scars, the world notices. Each project I completed was a piece of myself coming back together. The sleepless nights, the long hours, the endless self-doubt, they stopped feeling like punishment and started feeling like purpose. One night, a former coworker reached out on LinkedIn. "Emily," she wrote, "I just wanted to say thank you. After what happened, a lot of us realized how toxic things had gotten under Chloe. You were right to stand your ground. You always had integrity." It was a small message, but it hit harder than any apology from HR ever could. That's when I realized something. I wasn't a victim anymore. Chloe had stolen my job, but not my voice. She'd manipulated my kindness, but she hadn't killed it. And maybe, just maybe, that was my greatest power. Because while she'd been busy climbing her way up through deceit, I was learning something she never would: how to rebuild from ashes without losing my soul. I looked at myself in the mirror again, same eyes, but sharper now. Wiser. "I don't need revenge," I whispered. "I need redemption." But deep down, a part of me knew, sometimes, redemption is the revenge. And this time, I wasn't going to wait for someone to give me justice. I was going to create it. The woman who walked out of Sterling Innovations was broken. The one rising from the ruins? She was unstoppable. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but they never tell you how long you have to freeze before you can taste it. By the time I learned Chloe had resurfaced, 6 months had passed since Sterling cleared my name. I'd rebuilt my life, my small consulting firm was gaining traction, I had new clients, and for the first time in a long time, I could breathe. But then, late one night, as I scrolled through LinkedIn, her face appeared again, glowing in a new announcement post. "Excited to share that I've accepted the position of marketing director at Trendmark Solutions." Trendmark. The very competitor she'd accused me of leaking information to. The irony nearly made me laugh. Of course she'd end up there. Of course she'd fall upward again, charming her way into another executive role built on lies. But I wasn't the same woman she had betrayed. I wasn't going to confront her in anger or post some vindictive rant online. No, that would only make her look innocent and me bitter. This time, I was going to be strategic. The first thing I did was gather everything, every email, every document, every screenshot Michael had shared from the investigation. I built a private digital archive with timestamps, system logs, and proof of her forgery. Not to hand it over yet, not until the time was right. Next, I began researching Trendmark, their structure, their culture, their weaknesses. I learned their CEO, Daniel Reed, was obsessed with reputation and partnerships. He'd built the company's image on transparency and trust. If he ever discovered his new director had a history of corporate fraud, well, that would be catastrophic. But I didn't want to simply get her fired. That would be too easy. Too clean. I wanted her to watch the truth unravel slowly, inevitably, like a noose tightening. So I reached out to a few mutual contacts. Former colleagues who still admired me, who had quietly distanced themselves from Sterling after the scandal. I told them I was expanding my consulting services and looking to collaborate with Trendmark on a joint campaign. "Funny," one of them said, "Chloe's heading up their marketing now. You two working together again?" I smiled. Something like that. A week later, I arranged a formal pitch meeting with Trendmark. My proposal was legitimate, a full-scale brand partnership, but underneath it was a hidden intention. I wanted Chloe to see my name in her inbox. I wanted her to realize that the woman she'd buried had not only survived, but was thriving. When the email went out, I could almost picture her reaction, that flicker of panic behind the confident mask, the dread curling in her stomach. She replied 2 days later. "Emily, what a surprise. Let's set up a meeting next week to discuss the proposal. Congratulations on your success." I stared at the message, my pulse steady. No apology. No guilt. Just polished professionalism, like she hadn't destroyed my life once before. Perfect. The following week, I walked into Trendmark's lobby wearing the same calm expression I'd worn the day HR escorted me out of Sterling. Only this time, I wasn't the one being judged. Chloe greeted me in the conference room with that same practiced smile. Her hair was shorter, sharper, just like her ambition. "Emily," she said smoothly, "it's been a while." Not long enough, I thought, but instead I replied, Good to see you, Chloe. As we talked, I watched her carefully. She was confident, too confident. She really believed I'd moved on, that I was here for business, not payback. And that's exactly what I wanted her to think. Over the next few weeks, we exchanged drafts, presentations, and strategy calls. Every interaction was polite, cordial, and every one of them was a move in my quiet game. Through subtle conversation, I began to steer her into revealing her usual tactics, embellishing results, exaggerating metrics, taking credit for other people's work. She was predictable. I knew her patterns now, and she didn't realize I was recording every virtual meeting. Then came the final step. During one of our sessions, she shared confidential Trendmark campaign data over a public video call, just between us, she said with a smirk. She had no idea the call was automatically recorded through the collaboration platform. No idea that her casual breach of confidentiality violated Trendmark's strict data policy. And no idea that I'd quietly copied that recording complete with timestamps and her own voice admitting she'd used parts of old Sterling strategies, which, ironically, were my original designs. It was the perfect mirror of what she'd done to me, except this time, I didn't need to forge anything. She'd built her own trap. I just handed her the rope. A few days later, I sent an anonymous tip to Trendmark's internal ethics committee, attaching the recording and the documentation from Sterling's investigation. Then I waited. It didn't take long. 2 weeks later, LinkedIn exploded again. Her profile was gone. Trendmark issued a bland statement about personnel restructuring due to internal review. She'd fallen again, this time without anyone to blame. That night, I poured a glass of wine, opened my balcony door, and watched the city lights flicker. There was no triumphal music. No dramatic ending. Just quiet satisfaction, the kind that comes from knowing the truth finally caught up. I didn't ruin her life. She did that herself. I simply held up the mirror and let her see what she'd become. And for the first time since that awful day in HR, I felt something deeper than relief. I felt free. Because revenge, I learned, isn't about destruction. It's about restoration of truth, of dignity, of power. And I had all three again. They chose the annual marketing summit to bury her. It was a mistake on Chloe's part. She loved the stage, the lights, the way an auditorium full of applause made the world seem small and conquerable. I chose it for the same reason. If she wanted spectacle, she would get a lesson in how silence and evidence can be louder than any speech. I sat 3 rows back, hands folded, heart even. My firm had been invited to consult on a panel about ethical growth. The irony tasted sweet. Around me, marketing directors and investors chatted, their lanyards clinking like jewelry. Chloe arrived radiant in a power suit, the sort of smile that had snared promotions and lovers alike. She sashayed to the podium like a queen accepting crowns. Nobody in that room knew the foundation of her rise was wrought. Not yet. Michael spoke first, quiet, authoritative, setting the stage for what everyone assumed would be an innocuous keynote. Then he did something no one expected. He didn't introduce Chloe's talk. Instead, he asked the summit organizer for a moment and requested full attention. The room hummed with curiosity. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, voice steady as a metronome, "thank you for being here. I have an urgent announcement about a matter of professional integrity." A murmur. Chloe's smile flickered, just for a breath. I felt it like a wind through a cracked window. What followed was surgical. Michael presented a timeline, not accusation, but chronology. Dates, timestamps, IP logs, corroborating emails. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't use theatrics. He laid out the facts like bones on a table, clinical and undeniable. Forensic screenshots glowed on the massive screen behind him, the forged emails stitched together, the deleted drafts recovered, the communication trails pointing back to Chloe. Then he played the recording I'd captured at Trendmark, her voice, casual and careless, admitting to repurposing old strategies and bragging about getting what she wanted. The auditorium fell into a sound so heavy you could hear the carpet breathe. Chloe's face paled as if someone had dimmed the lights inside her. She made a small sound, a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. Hands reached for phones. People leaned forward. Social feeds, already ravenous, began to feed. The room hummed with a new current, exposure. Her defense was instant and rehearsed. Denial, then deflection. "This is taken out of context," she said, voice brittle. She tried to point at me at my presence, as if that would flip the script. She tried to frame me as the jealous competitor, the woman clawing back because the world had moved on without her. But the evidence had weight, it had the gravity of truth, and it pulled everything into place. Investors exchanged glances. An executive from Trendmark sat in shock, whispering into a phone. A journalist in the front row already had a headline forming in her head. The kind of headline that eats reputations for breakfast. Then came the final stroke. Michael clicked to one last slide, financial irregularities traced to campaigns Chloe had led. He showed how fabricated metrics had inflated client expectations, how borrowed strategies, my strategies, had been laundered through her name to land partnerships and bonuses. The numbers were laid bare: audit trails, client complaints, contract clauses breached. It was not just moral corruption anymore, it was fiscal reckoning. You could feel the air leave the room. Phones recorded, cameras flashed, and Chloe realized, in the slowest, most terrifying way, that the stage was no longer hers to own. She reached for a rebuttal, but the microphone felt like a prop in someone else's script. Security quietly moved in. An organizer asked her to step off the stage. She obeyed, trembling with the dignity of a monarch dethroned. Outside, the world was faster than our hearts. The clip, 15 minutes of Michael's presentation and my recorded admission, was uploaded, shared, and dissected. Within hours, Trendmark's board convened emergency meetings. PR teams drafted statements. Clients threatened to pull contracts. The financial partners who'd lined up behind her buzzed with calls that ended in terse sentences and sudden cancellations. I watched it all with a strange, cold clarity. This wasn't gloating. There was no triumphant music swelling inside me. Instead, there was a deep, resonant relief, the kind that comes when a wound finally stops bleeding. Chloe's empire of smoke and mirrors collapsed not because I tore it down with theatrics, but because truth finally caught up. As security led her past me, she glanced at my face. For a moment, her eyes were wide and utterly human, not the predator I'd come to recognize, but someone small in the glare of consequence. She mouthed something that might have been an apology, might have been a plea. I didn't know, and I didn't need to. I walked out into the night alone, the city lights cutting a path in front of me. Reporters shouted questions I didn't answer. My phone buzzed with messages, consultants wanting to work with me, old colleagues apologizing, strangers praising me. It all washed over me like rain across glass. In the quiet of my apartment later, I didn't celebrate. I folded the photo of Chloe and me from the gala into a neat square and placed it in a drawer. The anger that had once roiled like a storm had settled into something cleaner, justice rendered, dignity reclaimed. Revenge had not been fireworks or a spectacle. It had been patience, restraint, and ironclad truth delivered with calm precision. I had not destroyed her life for pleasure. I had exposed the life she'd already built on theft. I lit a candle, watched the flame breathe steady, and felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in a long time: peace. The morning after the summit felt different, quieter, sharper, like the world had been rinsed clean overnight. The city outside my window moved at its usual chaotic pace, but I woke to a stillness that didn't feel like emptiness. It felt like peace. Chloe's name dominated headlines for the next 72 hours. Corporate queen caught in web of lies. The fall of Trendmark's golden girl. Her face, once the symbol of effortless success, now framed the cautionary tale of ambition without ethics. Commentators dissected every detail: her manipulation, the forged evidence, the internal power plays, while social media fed on the drama. But for me, it wasn't drama anymore. It was closure. I didn't gloat. I didn't post. I didn't even answer half the messages flooding my inbox: invitations to talk shows, podcasts, interviews. They wanted my story, my pain, my revenge arc wrapped in sound bites. But my story wasn't about spectacle. It was about survival. And sometimes, silence tells a more powerful truth than the loudest voice in the room. Michael dropped by my apartment a few days later, bringing coffee and a look of cautious pride. "You did it," he said simply. "No," I corrected softly, wrapping my hands around the mug. "I just told the truth and waited for the noise to catch up." He smiled, that small, knowing smile that said he understood. "You always underestimated yourself." I looked out at the skyline. The same city that once felt suffocating now looked wide open. Not anymore. Chloe resigned officially within a week. There were whispers of lawsuits, internal audits, and quiet settlements. She disappeared from the spotlight, her once bustling social feeds frozen in time. Last I heard, she'd moved abroad, reinventing herself under a new name. The world would forget, eventually. But I didn't need her punishment to be eternal. Her exile from the empire she built on deceit was punishment enough. My own world shifted slowly but meaningfully. Trendmark offered me a formal apology and a consulting role. I declined. I didn't want to rebuild my life in the same room that tried to erase me. Instead, I started something of my own, a small brand consultancy that worked exclusively with ethical startups. No smoke, no mirrors. Just authenticity. Clients came not because I was the woman from the scandal, but because they saw integrity in what I stood for. In the evenings, when I sat by my window watching the city lights flicker, I thought about that Christmas night, the one where Chloe looked me in the eyes and said I didn't deserve a plate at my own table. Those words used to cut like glass. Now, they sounded hollow. Because I finally understood I was never meant to beg for a seat. I was meant to build my own table. The betrayal had been my crucible. It burned away the version of me that needed validation from others, from friends, bosses, lovers, anyone who fed off my gentleness and mistook it for weakness. Pain had become my teacher, and its lessons were permanent. That forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. That strength doesn't need to roar, sometimes it whispers. That dignity is not given, it's reclaimed. One evening, I received an anonymous envelope in the mail. Inside was a single photo, Chloe and me from years ago, smiling at the gala where everything began. On the back, in handwriting I didn't recognize, someone had written, "Even the brightest stars can burn themselves out." I didn't know if it was from her or someone else entirely. I just smiled, set the photo in a drawer, and lit another candle, not for mourning, but for release. The flame flickered like a heartbeat, steady and sure. For the first time in years, I didn't feel haunted by the past. I didn't need to win anymore. I had already won, not because she lost, but because I found myself again. I stepped out onto the balcony, the wind threading through my hair, the city stretching endlessly beneath me. I whispered to the night, a small prayer of gratitude, for every time they called me weak. Thank you. Because weakness taught me how to rise quietly. And then came the line that had lived inside me all along, the poetic justice of it all. She told me I didn't deserve a plate at my own table. So I built a table so large, she'll spend the rest of her life watching from outside the window. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted? Have you felt that same fire, that moment where pain turned into power? Tell me your story in the comments below. Let's remind the world that quiet strength is still strength. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to remember revenge isn't always destruction. Sometimes, it's just rebuilding yourself so beautifully that your absence becomes their greatest loss.